It was 10:30 in the morning on May 18th, exactly a month ago, when I wrote the following quote on a dry erase board that hung right above my bed. I wrote, "Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It's our light and not our darkness that most frightens us. But we are all meant to shine. It's not just in some of us, it's in every one. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give others permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fears, our presence automatically liberates others." For the past 30 or so days, I would wake up and read these powerful words by Marianne Williamson. And before I went to bed, I read them again. I call this my daily inspiration. It was, and it still is actually right now, a part of my process in building the courage and having the courage to stand up here on stage and speak to you all today. Now, some of you may think courage is the ability to do something without being afraid. But courage requires fear. It's defined as the ability to do something that frightens us. So several months ago, when I was first challenged to do this talk, I remember saying, "What an incredible opportunity." Personally, I love TED Talks and I watch them on a regular basis, so when I was given the chance to do one myself, I didn't think twice. I accepted it right away. And at first, it was all excitement. But soon after, I realized I would have to start from complete scratch and come up with an idea that was well worth sharing. So I spent a lot of time looking into the ideas I was most passionate about. And I spent a lot of time researching the different concepts and details that went behind these ideas. And I spent a lot of time talking to different individuals to gather different angles on these topics. But with every idea that I tried to further develop, the same questions kept popping up. What if this isn't good enough? What if people judge me on what I have to say? And who will even listen to me? I'm not your typical expert in the field or a business owner with so much experience or a seasoned public speaker. Why should I be on stage, I thought? Why me? And with every idea that I tried to further develop, I felt like I was taking 10 steps back instead of being able to move 10 steps forward. And for a while, I didn't know why I kept feeling this way. It wasn't until I took the time to internalize these questions, sit down, write out what it was that I was feeling, that I recognized that the reason I was asking myself these questions in the first place was because of fear. I mean, for the first time, I would be physically and metaphorically in the light. I would be standing up on a stage with all eyes on me, speaking my mind on a topic of my choice. The fear of failure, the fear of judgment, and the fear of inadequacy were all intertwining and playing around with my mind. But this was the first step in building courage. It was internalizing these feelings and recognizing the fear. And once I did this, it didn't get much easier. It actually got much tougher to the point where now these fears became excuses as to why I should back out and run away from this challenge. But there were people beside me to tell me to try and keep my head up and to move forward. And recognizing the fear is one thing. It's very important. It's the first step. But what laid ahead took the most effort in building courage, and that's accepting the fear and learning how to work with it. And I did that by trying to focus on self-efficacy. Now, although I had people to try and tell me to keep my head up and to keep moving forward, over a month ago, I had to ask, why should I? And you can imagine that I didn't really have an answer. I thought to run away. I was afraid. But I already committed. And I already accepted. Why did I even do so in the first place? And I thought back to what I originally said in the midst of all the excitement. And I said, what an incredible opportunity. And the word opportunity, it left a ringing in my ear. Of course, I didn't want to let down the one who offered me the opportunity, as well as the people who tried to help me move along. But what it really boiled down to is that I don't want to pass up an opportunity for this introspection and for growth. So for the remainder of the time, I would frame the talk. Every time I thought of it, I would frame it as an opportunity rather than frame it as a challenge, the way it was actually presented to me. And I would, well, first of all, challenge, when we hear that word, it's a bit intimidating. But when we hear the word opportunity, we shed positive light on that. We want to go after it. We want to take it on. And I would lay out a process that would help me focus on my ability. I would focus on self-efficacy. Now, I've said self-efficacy twice, and some of you may not know what that means. But self-efficacy is something that I had been learning about in my organizational behavior class this past semester at the University of Delaware. And I recognize it as being important to building courage. Self-efficacy is a theory that was developed by the famous psychologist Albert Bandura. And according to a study done by the Review of General Psychology, Bandura is ranked as the 4th most cited psychologist in history. And he defines self-efficacy to mean a person's belief in his or her own ability to succeed at a given task or in a particular situation. And he explains that these beliefs are determinants of how people think, how they behave, and how they feel. So when I asked myself those questions like, what if this isn't good enough? I thought, well, then you've failed. And what if people judge me on what I have to say? I thought, well, you won't be highly thought of. And who will even listen to me? I thought probably no one. I can't, I'm not, I won't, no one. All of these words, all of these thoughts that I kept saying to myself and out loud were so negative. My perceived ability in doing this was very low and somewhat non-existent. I had low self-efficacy. But Bandura explains self-efficacy is not set in stone. It's something that can be enhanced, that can be increased through 4 different methods. And these 4 different methods that he outlines are mastery experience, vicarious experience, verbal persuasion, and psychological state. So for the past month, I would focus on these 4 methods to try and enhance my self-efficacy and work on the ability aspect of courage. So I'll tell you a little bit about mastery experience first. Mastery experience is the overall name of the method, but within it is an aspect called guided mastery. And Bandura says this is the most effective method in enhancing self-efficacy. So think of guided mastery as a path, broken down into steps, with an end goal at mind. Basically, a person similarly breaks down a task into smaller steps with their end goal at mind. And it rests on the notion that with practice and with exposure at each step, a person begins to feel, comfort begins to set in, and allowing that person to feel more capable of mastering the overall task at large. So for me, as someone without much experience public speaking in front of a stage, I had to break this task down into smaller steps. And I began by practicing in front of a mirror many times until I felt like I could get it right and until I felt like I wanted to be listened to. Then I went on to practice in front of family many times until I felt like I could get it right. And then I went on to practice in front of friends and other acquaintances and groups until I felt like I could get it right. And by doing that, I exposed myself to these fears at each step, to the point where now I'm up here, and I've seen myself succeed at those previous steps, so I've felt more capable, and I feel more capable. And the second method is vicarious experience. Bandura asserts that people who see themselves similar to others that succeed by sustained effort, those observers then see themselves too as possessing the ability to succeed at similar efforts. So who is your role model? Who do you look at and think, hey, if they can do that, then I can do this? This past month was very difficult for me. Doubt popped up at random times. Fear consumed me. But in these moments, I would think of my parents and their story, how they immigrated from Bulgaria to America without knowing the language well at all and without having enough money to really succeed with. And they knew that this would be the most difficult task that they would ever have to go through. But they recognized that the opportunity was greater for themselves and greater for their children. And I think of the fear of failure they must have felt if they couldn't find a good enough job or do well enough in their job to provide for my sister and I and for themselves. And the fear of judgment they must have felt if they couldn't communicate well enough or be understood because of that language barrier. And the fear of inadequacy they must have felt when they couldn't assimilate to the American culture so easily. Fast forward several years later, both my parents are successful, but I want to point out that my mother works full-time, raises 2 daughters, and has gone back to school to pursue her passion in architecture, first graduating with her bachelor's and about to soon graduate with her master's. And to me, that is success. And because I see myself as most similar to her, I mean, we are a product of our parents, that goes without saying, but because I see myself as most similar to her, I think if she can do that, and if she can face all these potential consequences at a much greater level, then, hey, I can do this. And it makes my task seem so much more doable, and it makes me feel more capable. So I stand up here today because I've been able to find that inspiration. Third method is verbal persuasion. Bender believes that people can be persuaded by others to believe that they can succeed. So within the last month, I made sure to surround myself by the best support system I could, and all of these people behind me are a part of that, and that are here today too. So when I spoke about these fears, about these struggles, the people beside me would tell me, I believe in you. You can do this. Your voice does matter. And we all feel more empowered when we hear encouraging words and when we have support, right? It's true that people tend to feel more capable, tend to believe in themselves more when others believe in them too. So I stand up here on stage also because of the people who have been able to persuade me to believe in myself. And the fourth method is psychological state. Moods, emotional states, stress levels, they all affect how we perceive our ability to succeed. So if we minimize stress, elevate mood, if we stay positive, energized, then we enhance this self-efficacy. So what do you do that reduces your stress, that takes that overwhelming feeling away? Is it exercise, yoga, dance, meditation, laughing with your friends and family? For me, there's something about sitting next to a fountain, touching the water, listening to the sound, feeling the sun beam down on me, that simply makes me happy and it takes away my stress. It's my form of meditation. And I did it this morning. Went to the University of Delaware, that fountain, and I walked away feeling more empowered, and I walked away with a positive mindset. And that is so important when you are trying to believe in yourself. And all these four methods have helped me enhance my self-efficacy and have helped me to believe in my ability to see this through and to stand up here on stage today. But as I stand here now, fear still persists. But now when I ask myself these questions, I can work a little bit better with them. So what if this wasn't good enough, which I know I will ask? I can say, look at all that you've been through, and look at all that you've learned. You've built courage. And what if people judge me on what I had to say? Well, judgment is inevitable. People are entitled to their own judgments, to their opinions, but focus on the good things that they have to say. And who will listen to me? Even if one person is inspired, I've done a good thing. I imagine that if I were to do this again, I would have stronger courage because, as Ruth Gordon says, courage is like a muscle. We strengthen it with use. And I stand up here on stage speaking to you all about this journey of mine because nowadays, most of the things that we see and that we hear are inflated and are decorated to seem so much better than they really are. We use social media to post the best photos, the best thoughts, the best of everything so that we make ourselves seem so great, without faults, without flaws, and without fears, things that make us human. And often all we see are the successes and the outcomes, and we aren't told about the process it took to get there. More so, we aren't told about the struggles and the weaknesses that we have to face. And maybe that's because we don't want to seem inferior, or we don't want to talk about what we're afraid of. But today I want to be transparent because we all struggle, we all have doubts, and we all have fears, especially when it comes to facing challenges. So at the end of the day, why me? Well, because we're all meant to shine. It's not just in some of us, it's in everyone. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give others permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fears, our presence automatically liberates others. I was given the opportunity to let my light shine, and instead of retracting into the darkness, meaning staying in the boundaries of my comfort zone, I am up here because I am more powerful than my fears. And you too are all more powerful than your fears. My sister sent me a great quote the other day. It was perfect timing. Winston Churchill said, Fear is a reaction. Courage is a decision. And we all have the power to make that decision to build courage. It takes recognition of these fears. It takes a lot of conscious effort in accepting them to learn just how to work with them. So next time that you are faced with a challenge in which your light can shine, but you are afraid, take it step by step. Find inspiration. Surround yourself by the best support system you can find. Stay positive. Convert that energy into positive energy. And above all, recognize that this challenge is in disguise. Behind it all is opportunity. Opportunity to grow, an opportunity to ultimately build courage. Thank you.